Hello and welcome to Midday Update. Coming up are the local stories for the day. Omani official elected as chairman of United Nations Committee. Mohammed bin Awad Al Hassan has been elected as the chairman of the Special Political and Decolonization Committee of the United Nations. Oman News Agency said in a statement the following. The United Nations General Assembly elects by acclamation His Excellency Dr. Mohammed bin Awad Al Hassan, the permanent representative of the Sultanate of Oman to the United Nations, as chairman of the 4th Committee, Special Political and Decolonization Committee, during the 77th session of the General Assembly. The US lauds Oman for resolving Yemeni crisis. The United States has appreciated the role of His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq in resolving the Yemeni crisis. According to Oman News Agency, His Excellency Tim Lenderking, the US Special Envoy to Yemen, appreciated the efforts made by the government of the Sultanate of Oman, led by His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq, to reconcile the Yemeni parties and bring them together at the dialogue table in order to reach a peaceful solution to end the crisis in Yemen. In a telephone press briefing in which ONA participated, the US envoy affirmed the important role played by the Omani government regarding the extension of the truce announced by the United Nations in Yemen, expressing his confidence that the positive Omani role will continue. The American envoy indicates that the current stage focuses on 3 main points, which are the commitment of all parties to the terms of the truce, discussion of ways to reach a permanent ceasefire, and the dialogue that must take place between the Yemenis themselves to chart the future of their country. 2 weekly flights to operate between Kuwait and Salalah. In preparation for the Kharif season, Kuwait Airways will operate 2 weekly flights between Kuwait and Salalah, Oman Airport said. With the traditional salute, Salalah Airport welcomed the first Kuwait Airways flight, which will operate 2 weekly flights between Kuwait and the city of Salalah. The launch of this direct airline comes in response to the expectations of the increasing number of travelers to Salalah during the Kharif season, Oman Airport said in a statement. And now for the international news. World Bank warns of stagflation, slashes growth forecast. The World Bank on Tuesday slashed its growth estimate for 2022 by over 1 percentage point. The organization voiced concerns around the risk of stagflation, a mix of high inflation and sluggish growth. For many countries, recession will be hard to avoid, World Bank President David Malpass said. The World Bank predicted growth of 2.9% this year. In January, it had forecast 4.1% for 2022. The agency also predicted just 3% growth for 2023 and 2024. It expects oil prices to surge 42% this year. Non-energy commodity prices are expected to rise by 18%. The World Bank compared the current rising prices to the oil shocks of the 1970s. Additional adverse shocks, the agency warned in its new Global Economic Prospects report, will increase the possibility that the global economy will experience a period of stagflation reminiscent of the 1970s. Subdued growth will likely persist throughout the decade because of weak investment in most of the world, Malpass said. With inflation now running at multi-decade highs in many countries and supply expected to grow slowly, there is a risk that inflation will remain higher for longer. With that, let's take a look at the sports news. Hazlewood scalps 4 wickets against Sri Lanka, says wicket was slow. Australian pacer Josh Hazlewood, who contributed to Australia's impressive win against Sri Lanka in the first ODI with his immaculate bowling, said the wicket was slow and he improvised his bowling. A superb 4 for 16 by Hazlewood and 50s from David Warner and Aaron Finch guided the Aussies to a 10-wicket win over Sri Lanka as they chased down the target of 129 runs with ease. With this, Australia led the 3-match series 1-0. It is obviously quite hot here, quite sweaty. The wicket is slow, but you can use that to your advantage. The new ball flew off the bat a little bit and we dragged it back, said the pacer during a post-match conference. Coming to the match, chasing 129, Australia were off to a solid start. Openers Finch and Warner maintained strike rotation with some occasional big hits and good running between the wickets. At the end of 6 overs, Australia stood at a solid 59 for 0 with Warner at 35 and Aaron Finch at 24. After the power play, the duo continued their onslaught on bowlers. At the end of 10 overs, Australia had reached 87 for 0 with Warner at 49 and Finch at 38. A 4 of pacer Chaminka Karunaratne's delivery in the 11th over brought up Warner's half-century of 32 balls. In the 4th ball of the over, the Aussies reached the 100-run mark. Finch completed the formalities for the Aussies at the final ball of the 14th over with a 6, winning the game for his side by 10 wickets. Put to bat, Sri Lanka made a decent start to their innings as their opening batters Pathum Nissanka and Danushka Gunatilaka smashed 35 runs in 4 overs. Australia got their first breakthrough in the 5th over when Gunatilaka was caught by Michelle Marsh on Hazelwood's delivery and departed after scoring 26 runs off 15 balls. Charit Asalanka came to the crease and provided the momentum to Sri Lanka. Along with Nissanka, Asalanka took Sri Lanka across the 100-run mark in 12 overs and kept the scoreboard moving. Their happiness was short-lived as Michelle Stark bowled Nissanka out in the 12th over, leaving the team's total at 100 for 2. In the 20th over, Kane Richardson struck and sent Mahesh Theekshana back to the dugout and ended Sri Lanka's innings at 128 runs. Those were the local, international and sports stories for the day. For more updates, stay tuned and keep watching TTV.
You've just heard the live feed from the TTV studios on TFM 95.4. Let's talk.